When was the last time you looked in the mirror and asked yourself, am I living the life I truly want? Not the one others expect from me, not the one that seems right to everyone else, but the one that truly resonates with my soul. Carl Jung, that brilliant psychiatrist who revolutionized our understanding of human beings, had a powerful answer for this. True self-love emerges when you finally let go of the pain that keeps you trapped in patterns that don't belong to you. Think about it for a moment. How many times have you felt that emptiness in your chest, that feeling that something is missing, even though you seemingly have everything? Jung identified this as the disconnection from your authentic self, from your soul. In his own words, your vision will become clear when you look into your heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens. The modern world is designed to keep you asleep, immersed in endless distractions, constant comparisons, in the illusion that happiness lies in something external. But here's the truth Jung discovered after decades of studying the human psyche. Every time you choose to please others above your inner truth, every time you ignore that uncomfortable voice telling you something isn't right, you're rejecting the possibility of authentic and lasting self-love. This isn't abstract theory. Jung saw it in hundreds of patients. The suffering we experience has its roots in the denial of who we really are. You've felt it, haven't you? That discomfort when you say yes, when you want to say no. That anxiety that appears when you're living a life you don't recognize as your own. That exhaustion after spending time with people who drain your energy instead of nurturing it. Jung taught us that connecting with our unconscious isn't optional. It's the foundation of our mental and emotional health. The unconscious, that vast unexplored territory of our mind, is always communicating with us through dreams, intuitions, synchronicities, and yes, also through pain. When something persistently hurts in your life, it's not a signal to run away or distract yourself. It's an invitation to look deeper. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens, Jung said. And awakening means recognizing that self-love isn't a destination you reach after fulfilling a list of external requirements. It's a state of being that naturally emerges when you stop resisting your truth, when you give up the pain of self-denial. Stop for a moment and think about the decisions you've made lately. How many of them truly came from a place of authenticity? And how many were driven by fear, by the need to meet others' expectations, or simply because you didn't want to make anyone uncomfortable? Jung invites us to reflect on this because he knows that decisions that don't come from your inner truth only create more chaos and disconnection in your life. Perhaps you're thinking, but if I choose what I want, won't I be selfish? This is perhaps the biggest confusion we have about self-love, and Jung addressed it directly. Authentic self-love is not narcissism or selfishness. It is, in reality, the necessary foundation for being able to genuinely love others. Jung explained that we can only give what we possess. If you don't have a loving relationship with yourself, what kind of love can you offer others? Probably a conditional one, needy, even desperate. But when you choose yourself, when you honor your inner truth, your capacity to love expands enormously. You no longer love from a place of lack, but from fullness. The path to authenticity. Choosing yourself doesn't mean rejecting others. It's not about living in a state of isolation, but recognizing that to give your best, you first need to be at peace with yourself. This is the fundamental principle of self-love, a concept Jung explored deeply. Self-love isn't a luxury or an excuse to avoid responsibilities. It's the foundation from which all meaningful and authentic relationships can flourish. You might wonder, how do I know when I'm choosing myself and when I'm simply avoiding something difficult? Jung had an illuminating answer for this. The difference lies in the internal sensation. When you avoid something out of fear, you feel restlessness, contraction, a kind of weight. When you choose yourself, even if the decision is difficult, there's a sensation of expansion, relief, connection with something greater than yourself. Your task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find all the barriers within yourself that you have built against it. This profound observation by Jung shows us that self-love isn't something we must pursue or acquire. It's already within us. The real work consists of identifying and dismantling the barriers we've built to protect ourselves, but which now prevent us from experiencing that love. When you begin to remove those barriers, when you start choosing yourself, something changes deeply in your energy. You begin to attract people and situations that are aligned with your essence. It's as if the universe responds to your decision to live in truth, removing everything that doesn't serve you and bringing what you truly need to grow. But to get there, you must first face your shadows, those parts of yourself you've ignored, repressed, or feared. Embracing your shadow. The shadow, that revolutionary concept Jung introduced to psychology, represents all those aspects of ourselves we've denied, repressed, or rejected because they don't fit with our idealized image of who we should be. Everything we deny about ourselves finds us again as destiny, Jung warned. In other words, what we refuse to see in ourselves will eventually manifest in our lives in ways we cannot control. Think about that person who deeply irritates you, or that recurring situation that always seems to find you. What if they were mirrors of something in you that you don't want to see? Jung invites us to consider that our greatest external conflicts are, in reality, internal conflicts projected onto the world. Shadow work isn't easy. It takes courage to look at those parts of ourselves that shame us, that frighten us, that we prefer to keep hidden. But Jung discovered something amazing. It's precisely in those repudiated parts where our greatest potential lies. As he said, "In what you reject of yourself lies what you need." This process of shadow integration doesn't happen overnight. It requires courage, patience, and an unwavering willingness to know yourself. But what you gain in return is invaluable. You gain clarity, purpose, and an inner peace that no one can take away from you. You gain the ability to say no when something doesn't resonate with you, without fear of what others might think. And above all, you gain the freedom to be who you truly are. Jung expressed it this way: "The acceptance of oneself is the essence of the moral problem and the epitome of a whole outlook on life." That is, accepting yourself completely, with your lights and your shadows, isn't just an act of self-love, but an act of moral responsibility. Because when you reject yourself, you inevitably project that rejection onto others. Listening to your inner voice. Perhaps you wonder how to begin this journey. The answer is simpler than it seems. Start by listening to yourself. Every time you feel discomfort, doubt, or even an intense emotion, stop and ask yourself what your unconscious is trying to tell you. Because, as Jung said, all the answers you seek outside are already within you. You just need the courage to listen to them and act accordingly. One of the hardest things we do in life is listen to our intuition, especially when it leads us in a direction that challenges what we've built. Maybe it's a relationship you know no longer works, a job that consumes you without purpose, or even a dream you've pursued only because it seemed right. Jung reminds us that ignoring these signals isn't an act of strength, but a denial of our true essence. Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens. This phrase from Jung invites us to develop that inner gaze, that ability to listen to what our heart already knows. Because, deep down, you already know what you need to change in your life. You already know which relationships nourish you and which drain you. You already know which path calls to you, even if it scares you to acknowledge it. Choosing yourself means having the courage to let go of what no longer resonates with you. This isn't always easy. Often, we cling to the familiar because change scares us. We convince ourselves that the devil we know is better than risking the unknown. But Jung challenges us to see change as a door, not an end. A door to a more authentic version of ourselves. Embracing transformation. Think about it. What are you holding on to in your life that no longer serves you? What relationships, beliefs, or habits have you maintained out of fear of letting them go? Jung expressed it clearly. We cannot change anything until we accept it. Condemnation does not liberate, it oppresses. That is, the first step isn't to judge yourself for where you are, but to accept it completely. Only from that acceptance can true change emerge. Perhaps you feel that letting go of certain people or situations would be a loss, but the real loss occurs when you sacrifice your inner peace to maintain something that no longer makes sense. Choosing yourself isn't selfishness. It's an act of love and respect for who you are. Jung also spoke to us about the process of individuation, that journey toward integrating all parts of our psyche. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, he said. And that privilege isn't reserved for a few, it's your birthright. But it requires you to give up the pain of living a life that isn't yours, of carrying expectations that don't belong to you, of seeking approval instead of authenticity. When you finally choose yourself, something magical happens. You begin to see clearly what was previously clouded. The people who truly support you stay, while those who drained your energy disappear. This isn't coincidence, it's the reflection of an internal change. Jung called it synchronicity, that connection between your inner and outer worlds that aligns everything when you decide to live in coherence with your truth. The power of synchronicity. Synchronicity, that fascinating concept Jung introduced, shows us that when we're aligned with our inner truth, the outer world seems to conspire in our favor. Not because there's some magical force, but because our perception changes, our decisions change, and we naturally begin to create a reality that reflects who we truly are. But this process also requires you to be honest with yourself. Sometimes, choosing yourself means admitting you've made decisions that don't reflect who you truly are. Perhaps you've allowed certain people to cross your boundaries, or you've said yes to things you knew you should reject. This isn't a reason to judge yourself, but an opportunity to learn, to recalibrate, and to choose again. Jung believed that authenticity isn't a state you reach once and for all. It's a continuous journey, a process of learning and growth. And on that path you'll face resistance. There will be moments when you doubt yourself, when you'll be tempted to return to old patterns just because they're comfortable. But in those moments, remember what Jung discovered. What you resist persists. What you accept transforms you. The world won't always understand your decision to choose yourself. There will be those who criticize you, who question your choices, and even those who distance themselves because you no longer fit their expectations. This can be painful, but it's also liberating. Because when you choose yourself, you stop seeking external validation. You understand that your value doesn't depend on what others think of you, but on what you think of yourself. Creating authentic connections. Jung expressed it with these words: individuality is the only thing that can bring meaning to life. That is, your ability to be yourself without apologies or justifications is what makes your life meaningful. It's not external achievements, recognition, or even relationships, although all these things can be valuable. It's your authenticity, your ability to be who you truly are, that infuses meaning into every aspect of your existence. This doesn't mean you should live isolated or disconnected from others. On the contrary, when you choose yourself, your relationships transform. You no longer seek approval, but connection. You no longer settle for superficial relationships, but seek bonds that nourish your soul. And in the process, you discover that the right people will always be by your side, not because they need you, but because they value you as you are. Jung deeply understood that humans are relational beings. We aren't designed to live in isolation, but to create meaningful connections with others. But those connections can only be genuine when we're connected with ourselves. Know all the theories, master all the techniques, but as you touch a human soul, be just another human soul, Jung reminded us. This is the true power of choosing yourself. It allows you to relate to others from a place of authenticity, not need. When you begin to live from your authenticity, the world around you changes. This isn't magic or a trick. It's the profound connection between your inner and outer worlds. Jung spoke about how our psyche projects outwardly everything we carry within. If you live in conflict with yourself, you'll attract conflict. If you reject yourself, you'll attract rejection. But if you choose yourself, if you accept yourself as you are, you'll begin to notice how the circumstances and people around you also change. The paradox of transformation. What you resist persists. What you accept transforms. This profound observation by Jung shows us the path to true transformation. It's not in fighting against what we don't want, but in fully accepting where we are as the first step to change. It's the paradox of transformation. Only when we accept what is can we create space for what could be. This transformation doesn't happen immediately. It's a process, and like any process, it requires patience and commitment. There will be days when you'll feel like you're regressing, moments when your old habits will try to return. But here is where the true test lies, in your ability to remain firm in your decision to choose yourself, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's lonely. Jung taught us that the journey toward oneself isn't an easy path. There is no birth of consciousness without pain, he said, but he also assured us that this pain is transformative. It's the pain of growth, of awakening, of becoming who you truly are. It's very different from the sterile pain of self-denial, which only generates more suffering without purpose. Choosing yourself won't always be understood by those around you. We live in a world that values sacrifice, giving everything for others, even at the cost of our well-being. But Jung taught us that we cannot give what we do not have. If you sacrifice your happiness, your energy, or your inner peace to please others, what you're offering isn't authentic, and sooner or later, that imbalance will manifest. The mirror of relationships. Know all the theories, master all the techniques, but as you touch a human soul, be just another human soul. This beautiful phrase from Jung reminds us that our shared humanity is what truly connects us. Not our masks, not our achievements, but our capacity to be authentic, vulnerable, and true. Think about your current relationships. How many of them make you feel inspired, motivated, and at peace? And how many leave you exhausted, confused, or even empty? Jung invites us to reflect on this because our relationships aren't simply social connections, but mirrors of our inner state. The people we choose to have close reflect the beliefs and values we carry within. If you allow someone to cross your boundaries again and again, it's not because that person is bad, but because there's a part of you that still hasn't learned to protect itself. The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. Jung understood that relationships have the potential to transform us deeply, but that transformation can only be positive when both parties are willing to be authentic, to show both their light and shadow sides. If you're constantly hiding who you are to please someone else, the transformation you'll experience will be one of diminishment, not expansion. Protecting your energy isn't a selfish act, it's an act of self-love. Jung believed that the unconscious is always working to guide us toward our well-being, but we often ignore its signals. That feeling of exhaustion you feel after interacting with certain people isn't coincidence. It's your unconscious telling you that relationship isn't aligned with your essence. And if you decide to ignore that signal, the cost will always be your inner peace. Setting healthy boundaries. Choosing yourself involves establishing boundaries. And boundaries aren't walls to keep people out, but bridges that allow more authentic and healthy relationships. When you say no to what doesn't serve you, you're saying yes to your truth, your dreams, and your well-being. This doesn't mean you should cut ties with everyone, but that you need to be honest with yourself about which relationships nourish you and which drain you. Jung expressed it with this profound observation: the shoe that fits one person pinches another. There is no recipe for living that suits all cases. That is, only you can know what's right for you. There's no universal formula, no predetermined path. Your task is to listen to your intuition, trust your inner wisdom, and have the courage to follow your own path, even when no one else understands it. As you begin to live from this authenticity, something wonderful happens. Your intuition becomes stronger. That inner voice that once seemed weak or confused begins to guide you with more clarity. You start making decisions that not only make logical sense, but also feel right deep in your being. This is the power of choosing yourself. It reconnects you with your intuition, with that internal compass that has always been there, waiting for you to trust it. Trusting your intuition. Intuition, as Jung explained, is one of the purest forms of connection with the unconscious. It's that feeling you have when something simply feels right or doesn't feel right. But to hear it, you need to silence the external noise. This means stopping the search for others' approval, disconnecting from social expectations, and learning to trust yourself. Because at the end of the day, no one else can know what's best for you. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakens. Jung constantly reminded us of the importance of that inner gaze, that connection with our truth. Because only when we're awake, truly conscious of who we are, can we create a life that reflects our essence. When you decide to choose yourself, you're sending a clear message to the universe. I'm ready to live from my truth. And the universe responds. You begin to attract people, opportunities, and experiences that are aligned with who you truly are. This doesn't mean everything will be perfect or that you won't face challenges, but those challenges will no longer feel like a constant struggle. Instead, there'll be opportunities to grow and strengthen yourself. The power of alignment. As you decide to live from your authenticity, you also begin to experience what Jung described as synchronicity. Those seemingly casual events that fit perfectly into your life aren't coincidences. They're manifestations of your internal alignment. When you choose yourself and decide to honor your truth, the world seems to conspire in your favor. The right opportunities arrive, the right people appear, and everything begins to flow in a way that previously seemed unattainable. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. This powerful observation by Jung shows us the importance of making the unconscious conscious. Because until we recognize our patterns, our limiting beliefs, our unhealed wounds, we'll continue recreating the same situations over and over, wondering why life seems to be against us. But this doesn't mean the path is free of obstacles. In fact, often, the greatest challenges arise just when you decide to choose yourself. It's as if the world, accustomed to the compliant version of you, tries to test your commitment to this new path. This is where your power lies, because each time you reaffirm your decision, each time you choose your inner peace over external demands, you're strengthening that connection with your true self, staying the course. The key is to remain firm, even when doubts appear. It's normal to feel fear when leaving behind the known, even if you know it no longer serves you. But remember this: each time you choose to stay in a place that doesn't make you happy, you're closing the door to something that could transform you. Jung taught us that change doesn't occur without resistance, but that resistance isn't a sign that you're wrong, but that you're advancing. Meaning makes everything endurable, Jung said. And meaning emerges when we live in alignment with our truth, when our actions reflect our deepest values, when we allow ourselves to be who we truly are. It's that sense of purpose that sustains us through difficult moments, that gives us the strength to continue when the road becomes steep. One of the most powerful ways to overcome that resistance is to reflect on what you truly value. What is most important to you? What kind of life do you want to build? When you have clarity in your values and goals, it becomes easier to make decisions that are aligned with them. And in doing so, you begin to attract people and situations that share that same energy. It's important to remember that you're not alone on this journey. Although choosing yourself may seem like a solitary act at first, you're actually building a path that will attract the right people, those who support you, who celebrate you, and who are willing to walk with you. These people don't need you to change to fit into their lives. They accept you as you are because they too have chosen to live from their truth. The foundation of true love. Where love rules, there is no will to power, and where power predominates, love is lacking. Jung deeply understood the difference between relationships based on control and those based on authentic love. When you choose yourself, you naturally begin to attract and create relationships based on mutual respect, freedom, and acceptance. You no longer need to control others to feel secure, because you've found that security within yourself. When you reach this point, something within you changes forever. Life no longer feels like a constant struggle. Decisions that once seemed impossible are now made with clarity and confidence. And most importantly, you find a sense of peace that doesn't depend on external factors. Because as Jung taught us, true peace can only come from within. That inner peace is the result of honoring your needs, respecting your boundaries, and living in coherence with your values. But it's also a gift you can share with the world. When you live from your authenticity, you inspire others to do the same. Your courage becomes a beacon for those who are seeking their own path. And in this process, you not only transform your life, but you also impact those around you in a profound and meaningful way. The gift of authenticity. Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Jung reminds us that the clarity we seek isn't outside, but within us. And that clarity is the foundation of the unbreakable self-love that emerges when you finally give up the pain of living a life that isn't yours. Think for a moment about how your life would be if you could let go of everything that doesn't serve you. How would you feel if you set aside the relationships that drain your energy, the commitments that don't resonate with you, and the expectations you never wanted to meet? Imagine the freedom, the lightness, and the clarity you could experience. This isn't an unattainable dream. It's a real possibility that's within your reach if you decide to choose yourself. When you make this decision, you begin to realize that you're not losing anything by letting go of what doesn't resonate with you. Instead, you're gaining space for what truly matters. You're creating a life that not only makes sense, but also fills you with purpose and joy. This is the gift Jung wanted us all to discover. That true transformation begins when we stop seeking outside what has always been within. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. This beautiful invitation from Jung reminds us that there is no greater achievement than being authentic. It's not about accumulating external successes or meeting others' expectations, but about honoring that essential core that is unique in each of us. Awakening to your authentic self. When you choose to live from your authenticity, something extraordinary happens. You begin to feel truly alive. You're no longer trapped in others' expectations or the demands of a society that constantly tells you who you should be. Instead, you begin to listen to that inner voice that has always been there, whispering to you that there's something more, something better waiting for you if you have the courage to pursue it. That feeling of freedom is priceless. It's as if a heavy burden has been lifted from your shoulders, allowing you to breathe deeply for the first time in a long time. However, reaching this freedom requires courage. It requires that you face not only external expectations, but also your own fears, doubts, and limiting beliefs. Jung reminded us that the greatest enemy isn't outside of us, but within. It's that inner voice that says, "What if I'm not enough? What if I fail?" But here's the secret. That voice isn't your truth. It's just an echo of past experiences, of the conditioning you've accumulated throughout your life. Each time you choose to face it, each time you choose to act despite fear, you're dismantling those limiting beliefs and creating space for something new. This is the true power of choosing yourself. You free yourself from the invisible chains that have kept you bound. Be who you thought you would be. Jung invites us to reconnect with that pure vision we once had of ourselves. Before the world convinced us, we had to be something else. And in that reconnection, we find not only our essence, but also our purpose. Living with purpose. As you progress on this path, you begin to notice something curious. The things that once seemed important, those that consumed your time and energy, begin to lose their appeal. You no longer feel the need to compete. to prove your worth, or to please others. Instead, you discover a deep satisfaction in simply being yourself. And it's in this state of authenticity where you find your true power. This power isn't about controlling others or imposing your will. It's a power that comes from connection with your inner being, with that part of you that has always known who you are and what you need. It's a silent power, but unstoppable, because when you're aligned with yourself, nothing and no one can divert you from your path. Jung understood that giving up pain also means giving up the masks we use to protect ourselves. The persona is a mask that feigns individuality, that makes others and oneself believe that one is individual, when actually one is only playing a role through which the collective speaks. These masks, which we initially created to survive, eventually become prisons that prevent us from experiencing true self-love. This is perhaps the greatest challenge we face, distinguishing between who we truly are and who we've learned to be to please others. Jung spent decades studying this phenomenon and came to a revolutionary conclusion. True self-love only emerges when we have the courage to remove those masks, to show ourselves as we are, with all our contradictions and complexities. The path of individuation. Individuation does not shut one out from the world, but gathers the world to oneself, Jung said. That is, choosing yourself doesn't mean isolating yourself from the world, but finding your unique place within it. It means discovering how your gifts, talents, and even your wounds can contribute to a greater purpose. When you choose yourself, not only do you benefit, but also all those who come into contact with you. The beauty of this process is that it not only transforms your life, but also the lives of those around you. When you choose yourself, you become a living example of what it means to be authentic. You inspire others to question their own beliefs, to challenge their fears, and to choose their truth. You don't need to preach or convince. Simply by being yourself, you're making a difference. This is something Carl Jung understood deeply. He knew that individual change has a ripple effect, that each time a person chooses themselves, they're contributing to a collective change. Because when we live from our authenticity, our relationships, communities, and even the entire world transform. But don't be mistaken, this journey isn't linear. There will be days when you'll feel strong and sure, and others when you'll doubt everything. Those moments of doubt are part of the process, and Jung saw them as opportunities to deepen your connection with yourself. Each challenge, each setback, is an invitation to reflect, to learn, and to grow. A collective journey. The important thing is to remember that you're not alone. Although the journey toward authenticity may seem solitary at first, you'll always find people and resources that support you on the path. Maybe it's a book, a conversation, or even a video like this that comes to you at the exact moment you need it. These aren't accidents, they're signs that you're on the right path. One of Jung's most revolutionary ideas was his concept of the collective unconscious, that dimension of our psyche that we share with all humanity. This discovery shows us that, at a deep level, we're all connected. Your struggles, your victories, your path to self-love aren't just yours. They're part of a collective journey toward greater consciousness. The most important thing is this: to be able, at any moment, to sacrifice what we are for what we could become, Jung said. That is, to discover that essence that transcends labels, roles, and expectations. That essence that remains immutable through all the changes and challenges of life. When you connect with that deeper identity, self-love stops being something you seek and becomes something you simply are. The unbreakable self-love that emerges when you give up pain isn't fragile or conditional. It doesn't depend on your achievements, your appearance, or others' approval. It's solid, constant, indestructible. Because it's not based on what you do, but on who you essentially are. Integration of light and shadow. Jung expressed it this way: one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. That is, true self-love doesn't come from pretending to be perfect or denying your shadows, but from integrating them, accepting them as valuable parts of your totality. When you accept both your light and shadow sides, you discover a way of loving yourself that no one can break. When you look back at all you've overcome, you realize that each step, each decision, has led you to this moment. And although the future may seem uncertain, there's one thing that will always be true. As long as you continue choosing yourself, you'll be building a life that's truly worth living. The greatest gift you can give yourself is to be yourself. Not the version of you that others expect, nor the one you've created to fit in, but your purest essence, the one that exists when no one is watching. Carl Jung showed us that life's true work isn't in seeking outside, but in unraveling the mystery we carry within. And when you finally choose yourself, you realize that everything you were seeking was always with you. A call to action. This is a call to action. Life is too brief to live trapped in others' approval, to ignore your own needs and dreams. Today is the day to take the first step, to face your shadows, listen to your intuition, and reconnect with your true self. Because when you choose yourself, you not only transform yourself, but also the world around you. What now? This is the moment to reflect on what you've heard. Ask yourself, which aspects of my life are in alignment with my true self? What pain am I ready to give up to allow my unbreakable self-love to emerge? Remember that every small step counts, and you're not alone on this journey. This space, this channel, is here to remind you of your potential and to guide you on your path toward the authenticity Jung so valued. If this message resonated with you, make its impact go further. Share this video with someone who needs it, someone who is also seeking answers or facing a difficult stage. Each interaction, each comment, each click on like helps this message reach more people who, like you, are seeking their inner truth. Imagine the change we could generate together, a community of individuals committed to living from their authenticity, as Jung inspired us to do. Leave me your opinion in the comments. Tell me which part of this message touched your heart, or how you plan to choose yourself from now on. Share what pain you're willing to let go of for your unbreakable self-love to emerge. Every word counts, not just for me, but for all those who are seeking a path to their truth. And if you haven't done so yet, subscribe to the channel and activate the bell to not miss more messages like this, inspired by the profound teachings of Carl Jung and other great masters of human consciousness. Thank you for being here, for listening, and above all, for being part of this community of truth seekers. Remember Jung's words, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." You are not alone. Change begins with you, and the world needs more people who have the courage to be themselves. See you in the next video, and never forget that unbreakable self-love emerges when you finally give up the pain and dare to be who you truly are.